Okay, an end of the year review on the KTM 390 Adventure, which actually is quite good timing given the fact that we've just had all the details come through for the new 2025 Enduro R and the Adventure R, both which I'll come on to shortly, and which is the reason I brought these two bikes into the picture, to be honest, and I shall talk about that in a second. But this KTM 390 Adventure, it's been on fleet with me now for 4.5 years. It was one of the first bikes I had on the A2 fleet when I got a bounce back load, when I thought it was a good idea to run a fleet of bikes for people to ride in the small capacity markets, to ride them back to back to see which suited them best. So I got one of these, one of the early 310 GSs, early 411 Himalayan, and a CRF 250 Rally before the 300 came out. And I bought those bikes on a bounce back loan, and because it was rule of 6, that's all I could do for a year or so before the tours could kick back in. And this is one of the bikes I bought then. It had done about 500 miles. It was an ex-demo from, I think, Redline Motorcycles up in towards the Midlands. It's now done 8,500 miles. It's probably about 300 people ride it over those 4.5 years, riding it back to back with the original fleet of bikes, and then as I've added the new stuff with those, riding it alongside those bikes. In terms of items I've replaced, just mainly service items. So it had tyres, I think last year switched to TKC 80s rather than the 70s. It had chain and sprockets, and it had pads, and that's about it actually. The only other things I've changed are the SW Motec foot pegs, just to level off the foot pegs so you can stand a little bit better on it, and a slight rise in the bar. Other than that though, it's stock. And I've got to say, from a mechanical point of view, last year or over the last 4.5 years, it's been absolutely bulletproof. It's not missed a beat. It's not never started. It's never given me any issues. Has it been dropped? It was dropped in the first year, and that's the point at which I realised that KTM fitted this with an odd size bar, neither a 22 or a 28. So you have to stick with a KTM bar, which I think was £110. So that's my only criticism of living with this bike. It's not got quite round to the 9,000 mile service interval on the valves yet, which is by all accounts quite expensive. So I think from a service point of view, it's probably not the most cost effective, because it's quite a big job to do the valves on it. But whether I'll get that done, who knows. But yes, it's been a good bike. It's been reliable. Have people enjoyed riding it? I think it's a mixed blessing with this bike. I think because people expected it to be a bit more aggressive, a bit more off-road biased than what we actually got. I think there's a little bit of disappointment from people who take a while to adjust to the fact it's far more a road biased, sporty adventure bike than say the CF Moto or the CRF. You know, it's very much a road derived, based on the Duke 390, a road derived adventure bike. And that's where it really shines, to be honest. The WP Apex suspension, I think is best in class. It rides rough road really well, carries a lot of pace. The engine, it's a bit crude down low, I'd say, low revs, but when it gets up and flying, it really goes hard. It's 43 brake horsepower. I'd say the strongest performing bike in this class, more so than the CF Moto, more so just than the Himalayan 450. It really is a cracker of an engine, cracker of suspension that probably just lacked the adventure development that we came to expect at KTM, and that we probably expected to get back in 2020 when this came out. So people like riding it, but I think they find it's a little bit too focused for them. Some of the guys do, a little bit too frantic, a bit more of a teenager's bike rather than a grown adult's bike, which I think it could be seen both ways, as a criticism or as a positive. When I rode this in the French mountains down near Monte Carlo last year with the group, it was the best thing out there. You know, it was the fastest, most agile, lightest, most nimble, most fun machine I could have been on, even with the TKC 80s. You know, it would cut through the hairpins really well. It just carries so much pace and be so enjoyable and light and flickable. 182 kilos, so it's not particularly heavy. The seat height is a little bit broader than it looks, because the seat is quite broad. Sorry, the seat height is taller than it looks because the seat is broad. So it's a little bit tiptoey for some people. But as a road biased bike, it really grew on me. It wasn't a bike I particularly enjoyed in the first year or so, but as I've owned it longer, I just really love getting back on it. So it's not for everyone, but if you're looking for a road biased adventure bike, small capacity, at great value, because you can get one of these for £4,500. You know, KTM's woes seem to be from the fact that they've overproduced to the tune of 200,000 bikes. So there's 200,000 bikes out there that they've not sold yet. Some of them are these, and the dealers are obviously doing a great deal on them. So £4,500 for a brand new one of these, yeah, it's hard to see how you could go wrong with that, to be honest. So that's where we leave this. I think it's not KTM's finest hour. It confused people for not being adventurous as we expect it to be. People thought it was going to be unreliable, but it's not. It's been a reliable, solid, fun machine that owners seem to love. I've got to be honest. The people who own these and run them love them. So I think that's a good indictment of the bike. Cosmetically, it's holding up pretty well as well. A bit of engine paint coming off there, but nothing too bad to say it's had a lot of abuse. The relevancy, obviously, doing this report now with the unveiling of the new 390 with the new 397cc engine. This is a 373 engine, the new 397 engine for 2025, is that it finally feels that KTM are taking this market, this smaller capacity adventure bike market, seriously. It's a shame that the initial Facebook posts about this new bike have been ridiculed, poo-pooed by that same old crowd who say, well, why not get a 690 KTM, or it's not got enough power, or it's not got enough suspension. Those sort of adventure heroes, bless them, that seem to think they need the maximum amount of power, maximum amount of travel to have a good travel trail bike, which is where I see that the Adventure and the Enduro are both slotted in. What's interesting about those two bikes is that they price them very keenly. The Enduro R is 5,600 and the Adventure R has just been unveiled at 6,600. Now, bearing in mind that the official price on this discontinued is about 6,500 and the spoke wheel one was 7,000. So they've come out with a new bike which has got more suspension, more technology, it's cruise control on the Adventure, and it's actually less than the outgoing model. So I think that is a real good progressive step, and it's been brought on probably by the success of the CF Moto and the Himalayan 450, which have shown that capable small capacity bikes don't have to cost a fortune, and actually the more you try and price them up, the less people want them. It's a very price sensitive market, so KTM are really cottoned onto that. And I've myself ordered an Enduro R to go on the fleet, because I think for 5,600 it's just a bit of a no-brainer if you're looking for an exciting trail bike, which leads onto the CRF 300. Now this is 6,700 now. Long travel suspension, mushy suspension, 29 brake horsepower or thereabouts, so it's 15 brake horsepower down on the new KTM. Suspension quality is a lot less on this. So KTM with that Enduro R, I think what they built, and in some ways the Adventure R, because the Enduro R and the Adventure R aren't that dissimilar, bar the cockpit, bar the 14-litre tank on the Adventure versus the 9 on the Enduro, bar the cruise control. They're actually chassis-wise and suspension identical. But what they've done with both those new KTMs, they've shown this to be slightly redundant, and also made us go, wow. So one of these, a bike like this, but with 44 brake horsepower, with good suspension and barely any extra weight. I don't think this is a heavy bike. People say, the Enduro crowd say this is too heavy, or they don't think they are. I think they're perfectly weighted for travel trail riding. That means you're going to spend some time on a fast road. You want a bit of solidness about the bike, a bit of weight to keep it grounded. So weight's not necessarily a bad thing. Yes, on technical trails it's not going to help, but as an overall bike, I think a bike like this weighing 160 is more than light enough for what the purpose of the bike is. So that KTM Enduro at 159 dry, probably sort of 166 wet, I think is gonna be awesome. It's got 230 mil of travel, it's got 44 horsepower, got good WP suspension. So imagine one of these for £1,200 less that's got a better engine and better suspension. That to me is an exciting prospect, and it, as I say, bar the name, bar the Honda badge, will make this redundant. Why I brought the CF Moto in is because with the Adventure R, I think what we'll see with that 390 is something that's capable of doing the long distance, i.e. the CF Moto, but also doing the trail work probably with more capability than the CF Moto. So I actually think the greatest challenger to the CF Moto is that Adventure R, because the KTM is going to be a good 20 kilos lighter. It's going to have 4 more brake horsepower, so it's going to feel faster, it's going to be more agile, it's going to have better quality suspension. I think that suspension is good, but it can be a bit firm and jittery at times. So out the crate at 6,600, it's going to be a bit quicker, a bit sharper, a bit lighter, a bit better suspended. Cruise control, the only thing what that's got is tubeless spoke wheels, whereas on the KTM it's tubed. That's got a bigger tank. So there's lots of pros and cons. But what KTM have given us with those two bikes is an alternative to that, an alternative to this. Probably the Adventure R is the one that straddles the middle best in serving both purposes. And then in the Enduro R, we've got something that will really rival this and better this. So finally, coming to the conclusion really, Finally, KTM have taken this market seriously, and maybe their financial woes has made them pitch it at a price that they know they need to sell bikes at, that will sell bikes at. So at 5,600, to me, ordering one at that price, bit of a no-brainer. It's an on-the-road price, so it doesn't even include the extra 200 quid that most dealers charge to put it on the road. So 5,600, you know, that's an exciting proposition. It'll make it difficult for the DRZ 400, which is going to be more money and dynamically no more capable, maybe less dynamically capable, more reliable, arguably so. But using this as a litmus test, this has been solid. This is built by Bajaj in India, same as the new 390, built by Bajaj in India. So, do we need to worry about the mechanical woes of the bike? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think that's pretty much proven to some degree. But if you want in Japanese build, then maybe wait out for a DRZ and spend an extra 1,500 quid on one. The shame for the Suzuki is not out till September. The shame for the KTM is that they're only bringing in three bikes per dealership of this new Enduro and the new Adventure R. So it seems an odd strategy in a way. They price it at a point which is going to peak demand. People are going to want it, but they're not supplying it, which is opposite to what they did with this one, which is obviously price it too high and then oversupply it. So I don't know who's making the decisions, but I'm not sure they're making good decisions. But who are we to say? So yeah, just as an overview of this rambling conversation, I think the KTM is going to be the one to watch. Will it be better than the CF Moto for whacking out some big miles in Europe? I don't know, but it's going to have a little bit more of this about it. It's going to have a little bit more of this, so it's going to have a little bit more trail friendliness. A taller seat, that's the only shame. So that's got a lower seat. Again, lots of pros and cons, but it's another option to add to your list. So end of year report. This will get sold on. What's it worth? $2.5 grand if that. And that's what I'd say about the KTM 390 Adventure, the old one, is that whether you buy a brand new one or a second-hand one, there's some incredible value deals on them. And actually, somebody asked me, what about one of these, a 310 GS or a Versys 300? And looking at the prices of them all and looking at what they do, I don't think there's a bike to beat this out of those three. This is faster and more focused, more lively than the Versys, and also than the 310 GS. It does everything at a faster pace better than those two bikes. Is it as reliable as the Kawasaki? Arguably not, but nothing is. Is it as soft and gentle as a GS? Probably not. So if you want either of those two things, go and look for the Kawasaki and the BM. But as a second-hand proposition, I've proven itself on my fleet at least, and on the forums, as I say, there's not a lot of issues with these bikes. I say it's a great bike. Does it matter if it's got cast aluminium rims for doing off-road? No, not at all. I don't think it's been an issue, and tubeless to me is a better option than tubed. So that's it. I just wanted to say, fingers crossed for KTM. Nobody likes to see a company fail. They're obviously architects of their own demise with their current situation, but it looks like with Bajaj and CF Moto coming to their rescue, they should be safe, and then what they pitched as their saving models look really good, and they price them at a point which people are going to buy them at. So in terms of selling bikes, I think they're on the right track. That's it. Cheers.